Somewhat inexplicably, evil always seems to find company. It's almost as if there's some kind of secret app that only the most messed up people use to communicate and congregate. Over the years, there have been some truly vile couples who have caused terror and distraught through their dangerous deeds. These are some of those killer couples. Hello everyone, and welcome to another video. Today we'll be looking at the top 10 most evil couples in history. Yeah, you heard it right. Number 10. Fred and Rosemary West. Fred West was arrested for fondling a 13-year-old when he was 19. He murdered a boy with his ice cream truck when he was 24, and a lady who was pregnant with his child disappeared and was found dead decades later when she was 27. In 1968, when West met 15-year-old Rose Letts, his cruel tendencies escalated. The pair murdered at least 12 individuals, including some of their own children. In reality, in order to guarantee that their surviving children behaved, the parents threatened them with the same fate as Heather. Fred committed suicide in 1994 after being charged with murder, whilst Rosemary remains incarcerated to this day. Number 9. Philip and Nancy Garrido. While heading to the school bus, JC Dugard, aged 11, was approached by a car and abducted. From 1991 to 2009, JC remained missing despite several witnesses and a massive community search effort. During that period, Philip and Nancy Garrido kept her in their backyard, where Garrido satisfied his sexual addiction. In 1976, Philip was jailed for kidnapping and rape, and it was in prison for this act that he met Nancy. During her 18 years in captivity, Dugard unavoidably gave birth to two of Garrido's children. In 2009, however, Garrido brought Dugard and her two daughters to the parole office, where JC was identified and Dugard's ordeal ended. Number 8. Roman Podkopay and Inessa Tarverdieva. This entry includes not just a couple, but also their family, and on paper, they appear to be a typical middle-class couple. He's a dentist, and she was a teacher. However, along with two of Taverdieva's children, they tormented Russia for 6 years, from 2007 to 2013, perpetrating dozens of robberies and more than 30 murders, including the deaths of many police officers. Whether or not he or she was the mastermind behind the crimes, it is evident that they considered this rampage as going to the office for a day's work. Finally, their reign of terror came to an end in a brutal gunfight in which Podkopay was slain. What do you believe the purpose of these crimes were? Money in the bank? Number 7. Syed Rizwan Farook and Tashween Malik. Domestic terrorism is an increasing concern, and this case culminated in one of California's bloodiest mass shootings in history. On December 2, 2015, Farook and Malik opened fire on guests at a holiday party at the San Bernardino County Department of Public Health, where Farook worked, and planned to explode bombs as well. They were inspired by overseas terrorist organizations such as ISIS. The conflict resulted in the deaths of the couple, 14 civilians, and 22 more who were injured. According to the FBI, they had gotten radicalized in the preceding years by eating poison on the internet. During this period, Farook and Malik plotted and executed the deadliest terrorist strike on the US since September 11, 2001. Number 6. Alvin and Judith Neely. In September 1982, Alvin and Judith Neely abducted 13-year-old Lisa Ann Milliken from a Georgia shopping mall. Both Alvin and Judith Neely were oriented towards a life of criminality. They subsequently transported her to a motel in Arizona where they raped and tortured her, injecting her with Drano before shooting her to death. Not long after, they attacked a young couple in a similar fashion, but John Hancock survived and identified his perpetrators. While Alvin was able to avoid the death penalty, Judith became the youngest woman to be sentenced to death in the US. The sentence, however, was commuted to life in 1999. Number 5. Charles Starkweather and Carol Ann Fugate. While other teenagers were hanging out with pals, Charles Starkweather, age 19, and Carol Ann Fugate, age 14, went on a murdering rampage throughout Nebraska and Wyoming. Starkweather murdered 11 individuals, including Fugate's family, between December 1957 and January 1958, with Fugate as an accomplice in many of these killings. The couple was finally apprehended when authorities happened upon their stranded vehicle on the side of the road. After a high-speed chase, both were apprehended, with Starkweather receiving the death penalty and Fugate becoming the youngest woman ever tried for first-degree murder in the US, spending 17 years in prison. Their story was so compelling that it inspired several film versions such as Badlands, California, and Natural Born Killers. Number 4. Gerald and Charlene Gallego. Whether you grew up wealthy or were battered by your mother's lovers, it's possible to become a murderer. Charlene, a good student with loving parents, went astray in her teens and finally met the unstable Gerald. In California, Nevada, and Oregon between 1978 and 1980, the pair kidnapped, raped, and murdered a total of 10 individuals, most of whom were teenagers. After declining that sex slavery would restore the spark in their romance, Gerald did most of the dirty work, but Charlene was a willing participant. However, in exchange for a reduced sentence, she testified against her husband. She was released in 1997. Gerald died in 2002 on death row for rectal cancer. Number 3. Ian Brady and Myra Hindley. These two were destined to be together. Ian Brady and Myra Hindley, described as remorseless and vicious, were responsible for some of the most heinous murders in Britain. After becoming obsessed with the concept of a so-called perfect murder, in 1963, Brady and Hindley committed the first of their 5 confirmed murders, all of whose victims were between the ages of 10 and 17, and the majority of whom had been sexually assaulted before their deaths. Many of their victims' bodies were subsequently discovered in Saddleworth Moor, earning the name Moor's Murders. After being handed over to authorities in October 1965 by Hindley's brother-in-law, both were finally found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. However, they did not formally confess to the crimes until 1987. Number 2. Raymond Fernandez and Martha Beck. What do you do for love? He sustained a head injury that may have altered his conduct, whereas she was an obese single mother living in a fantasy world. Together, they were the Lonely Hearts Killers, exploiting personal advertising in newspapers to locate, rob, and murder lonely women. Before he met Martha Beck in 1947, Raymond Fernandez had previously seduced and stolen from other women, one of whom died under mysterious circumstances. Beck occasionally posed as his sister and joined him in his criminal activities. By 1949, they had murdered at least 3 people, including a toddler. Both were executed by the electric chair on March 8, 1951, following their capture, and they professed their love to one another until the very end. Number 1. Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka. Murder is intrinsically bad, but murdering one's sister is on an entirely different level. Karla Homolka, along with her soon-to-be husband, Paul Bernardo, aka the Scarborough Rapist, was engaged in the 1990 killing of her sister. In the early 1990s, the vicious Canadian couple was convicted of raping and murdering 3 teenage girls. Homolka's sentence was lowered to 12 years for manslaughter in exchange for her devastating evidence, since Bernardo was allegedly the mastermind and she was his only accomplice. Eventually, video proof of their crimes surfaced, indicating that Homolka was significantly more involved than she initially claimed. Homolka was released from prison in 2005, whilst Bernardo is still incarcerated to the present day. So that's all from today's video. If you enjoyed it, remember to leave a like, subscribe, and ring that bell icon so you never miss our upcoming videos. And don't forget to share your thoughts in the comment section below. Stay tuned, and we'll catch you in the next video.